Morning, everybody. We've got attendees filling in, so we'll give it a couple of minutes while everybody gets logged on, and then we will start. Okay. I'm going to wait until we get up to 100. Seems like a round number, and then we'll get started. We've got a couple more minutes. Slowing down.
Okay. 108 already.
Okay, let's get started then. Thank you to everybody.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that. Just I'm letting you that you bought it so quickly.
It's fine. We'll get started so that and welcome everybody. So thank you to all of the attendees who've registered for today's webinar. Welcome to the Opportunities in Renewable Energy webinar that's been organized by SAPVIA and SAWIA. It's in partnership with WeConnect, and we will get lots more details on who WeConnect are a bit later in the program. And thank you so much to our sponsors, ED Platform, who you will also hear from a bit later in the program. And the webinar has been organized by Solar Power Africa, our partners. So thank you to everybody who's been instrumental in bringing together the webinar, Kim in particular. So lots of strong women in the background that have been organizing all of the speakers and the administrative side of this webinar. So thank you for that. We are here today basically to talk about opportunities in the renewable energy sector, but with a particular focus on women, given that it is Women's Month. We've also been asked just before we start to take 1 minute in silence for women that have been killed by their partners. And so I will just start the timer now as we're waiting. Noma has asked us to acknowledge that. And so if we can start now and just have silence for 1 minute, and then we'll get started with the webinar proper. So. Okay, thank you for observing that. And thanks again for those who joined while we were observing the silence. I am going to welcome again. So my name is Chanda Ngumalo. I'm the director at Harmattan Renewables, which is a technical consultancy operating in the renewable energy space. And I'm also the spokesperson for SAPVIA, the South African PV Association. So we're here because it's Women's Month. So you've all posted a picture on LinkedIn of a strong woman, and we've celebrated all of the women participating in the industry for this month. However, that happens once a year in August, and what we are looking to do is begin a discussion this year, 2020, that is ongoing for the rest of the year, to create real change in the industry and acknowledge that we need to increase the participation of not only women, but young people and Black people in the renewable energy industry. And so we want to open the discussion up to everybody participating in the industry and work together to achieve that goal. SAPVIA recognizes that we need to increase diversity and inclusion. And so we're going to be working towards this goal in collaboration with you and in collaboration with all of the wonderful women that are on this panel, as well as our partners, to achieve that goal. What we've got today is first our keynote speaker, Ms. Noma Taze from the Department of Minerals and Energy. She's the Director of Renewable Energy Initiatives, and she's going to be talking to us about the opportunities in the sector. Ms. Taze currently holds the post of director. She acts as the regional coordinator, amongst other roles, for the Environment Partnership, a program for renewable energy, energy efficiency, and clean technology. She joined the industry as a senior consultant at RAPS Consultancy, and then has served as a senior policy analyst at National Treasury, and then now holds the post of director. So I'm going to hand over to Noma, who's going to introduce, or who's going to have the keynote session. So Noma, I will hand over to you and put myself on mute. Please just let me know when you need me to change slides.
All right, thanks a lot, Shanda, for that introduction. What I will do, it's unlike a keynote, I'm not making a speech. I have done a short presentation, which would include an introduction, the context within which we are having this conversation, opportunities for women for employment in the renewable energy sector, for SMEs, how to become part of the renewable energy deployment legacy, and also I will then conclude. So we can obtain them. The introduction, I think first I must say good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So I just went straight into it after the introduction, but welcome everyone. I feel privileged to have been asked to do this task, and I will try to be as short as possible. I thought, because I'm not too sure who's in the audience, I do need to introduce the work that the department does, which is focusing on formulating energy-specific policies, legislation, regulations, programs, projects, and also to oversee implementation for the sake of promoting environmentally friendly energy carriers and ensuring that there is access to affordable and reliable energy for all South Africans. So I work in a unit that is responsible for ensuring integration of renewable energy into the mainstream energy supply. So we identify opportunities where we can identify some key activities that will make a difference in the sector, especially for technologies that are currently under deployed. And also we work very closely with colleagues who are doing planning, policy and planning within the department. So the whole idea is to make sure that there is diversification of energy supply options, and also to increase security of energy supply through a very clear energy mix. We use a variety of mechanisms, policies, legislation, and also there are extensive plans like the Integrated Resource Plan, that is the critical instrument used for the procurement of renewable energy technologies. Go, Sisi. The next slide. Shanda, are you there? Okay, so just very briefly, we have already up to now, through the procurement of renewable energy, we've had about four large bidding rounds, as well as 2 small-scale procurement auctions, where what we have seen is that solar and PV were the leading technologies that were allocated the most, and also the most procured in terms of megawatt capacity. We can go to the next slide. So I indicated that we use the integrated resource plan. So the first one that has been used for the bidding windows that I've spoken to, that was the IRP 2010. Currently, we have the Integrated Resource Plan 2019, which has just, the implementation of which has just kicked in with the emergency procurement. I guess many of you in the audience would know that that document was released about a week ago. Move on to the next one. So in my presentation, I think what is important is how we frame the renewable energy opportunities, not for women in particular, but generally for everybody, because this, as you will see during the presentation, it's still a growing sector. It's still very young in the country. We've only had 9 years of experience in procurement and deployment. Deployment perhaps a little bit shorter because of the lead time that it takes to get from construction to commissioning. So I think if we look at the opportunities, we have to understand the projected growth of the renewable energy sector in the long term, because that's what drives investment. So looking at the International Renewable Energy Agency, they are advocating that the share of renewables in the global power supply should at least double within the next decade, which is basically by 2030, in order to advance global energy transformation, to achieve sustainable development goals, and also the pathway to climate safety. Which means that in the electricity sector, what is advocated is that renewables should supply about 57% of global power by the end of the decade, which would be up from the current 26%. Among the reasons for this ambitious goal is that renewable energy solutions are now becoming more and more affordable, readily available, and can be deployed at scale. So to this end, at the beginning of this year, IRENA declared this period the Decade of Action. The next slide. And we would know that that was done in January, and then in South Africa, I think we started experiencing the impact of COVID, which engulfed the whole world, beginning from the end of 2019. So in light of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, IRENA has then offered some critical advice, which is practical on key investment and policy decisions that can be taken towards a post-COVID-19 recovery. And they have timed this over between 2021 to 2023 with policy recommendations such as safeguarding existing renewable energy projects, which have been found to be more resilient compared to other sectors. And this is seen to be a good opportunity to ensure that there is stable policy frameworks for transition-related infrastructure. Also, it's important to create renewable energy-based efficient infrastructure and to incentivize other currently under deployed options such as electric vehicles and biofuel use. I think that as South Africans, we can all attest to that. It's important to diversify supply chains, to develop local industries, provide finance, and to promote supply development programs and industry clusters, which is basically where the opportunities for everyone lie. And I think many countries are into this development of local industries. South Africa is therefore not alone. The recommendations from IRENA underline the use of investments to foster equitable, inclusive, and resilient economies. We can move. So we can move to the next slide, Shanda. Okay, so in terms of the projections, I thought let me just highlight the technologies that have been identified as promising the most growth, and that will be solar, the electric vehicle market, as well as the solar thermal. So on solar thermal, I just wanted to bring the attention of the audience to a program that is currently run by the South African National Energy Development Institute. Our entity Incentive, they've done with the support of the funders. It's led by the Austrian government. Out of that, I think they've shown the potential for solar thermal applications, large scale, instead of, I mean, it's basically an opposite of what we are doing with individual solar water heaters in residential areas, where they are providing something, a similar service in commercial buildings, one of them being at the at Wits University, just around the corner in Johannesburg. So we can move on. So I'm highlighting those to say to women who are in this meeting, the renewable energy sector has got opportunities at varying scales across the technologies, and it is really up to each one of us to identify where we would like to participate. There are also opportunities. I think many of us are trained by our education institutions for employment rather than for business, and there are employment opportunities that range from less skilled to highly skilled professional jobs in the sector. And the employment opportunities are usually a great start for many entrepreneurs who, before venturing into own businesses. There is some great work that has been done by Savia, which identifies the different sorts of opportunities from consulting right up to being involved in the development of projects within the sector. So the employment opportunities are both in the public and private sectors, and training at this point is available in many institutions in South Africa. Over the past 9 years, we've seen a lot of growth in terms of that. And the recent one that I think many people don't know about, there is a wind turbine service technicians training course that is being run at the South African Renewable Energy Technology Center at CPUT in the Western Cape. And that offers opportunities for skilling people, especially the young people who do not have who have not had exposure in the sector. And what is nice about it is that original equipment manufacturers have provided support to these trainees by offering them 2 months workplace training. So as far as I'm concerned, the renewable energy sector is also ripe for entrepreneurs. However, to my knowledge, historically, there has been no training for entrepreneurship. You basically land on the job with ambition as your driver and perhaps your coach as well. So I guess that we've got enough women in the room who've got that kind of ambition and who can find, because now we have people who are willing to take others under their wing and train them and coach them, and also work with them, maybe as BEE partners or, yeah, basically, I mean, there are lots of partnerships that are being formed. So we can move on to the next slide. There are also opportunities in the SMME sector, and these can be found within the IPP, where we do we're talking about large utility scale projects. Then on this, the opportunities are mainly from the program that is run by government, which I spoke about, the REAP, where which attracts large investors, but the opportunities are across the value chain. The private sector is also now that the initiatives there are set to grow. We've seen interest in the mining sector. We've seen Sasol advertising of for IPPs to come and assist them in implementing their renewable energy projects, which are basically meant to help with their decarbonization initiatives. It's important to underline the fact that this market is only 9 years old, which allows us as women, young entrepreneurs, and people with disabilities to explore the opportunities at an early age so that we grow with the sector as the opportunities are still opening up. There is also the small scale embedded generation sector, which is, to my knowledge, not even more than 3 years old at this stage. And there we've seen solar PV installations in the residential, public and commercial sector building becoming more attractive for energy security purposes. And that's in relation to what is happening in the electricity sector with the load shedding that we have experienced since probably 2008. Then in the municipal sector, there's also opportunities for biogas installations. There, I think a GIZ study showed that this would be, installing biogas would be the lowest hanging fruit for, which would contribute towards saving costs, in reducing the costs at municipal level. So some municipalities wouldn't do this themselves, but they would rather outsource that service to a potential project developer. SMMEs are there to provide the opportunities for them are usually to service their immediate local communities, and also to just take advantage of new opportunities that are created by the new business models being implemented across the SSEG sector. So for this one, I would like to draw the attention of the of our ladies and gentlemen in the audience to say you can check for opportunities in the SSEG sector at provincial level, because different provinces have come up with their own plans. Yes, we can move. Shanda, the next one. The next slide. Okay, I thought, I mean, the large utility scale opportunities, I think are somewhat of something that is very sexy and trendy, but there are opportunities in other areas too, which at this point I would like to underline the area of energy poverty alleviation and access. This is for me, an area where intervention is required, and where off-grid energy solutions or mini-grid or microgrid hybrid options are the options. So we have globally, we have a number of people who are currently without access, 1.2 billion in 2010, which has now in terms of the IRENA study, has come down to 789 million by 2018, where it is understood that off-grid renewable energy solutions have a potential to reduce the world's energy access gap. I think you would recall that in terms of the UN, there is a goal for universal access for all. And so we have to look at modern energy services and all the options that are possible to bring everybody on board in terms of what we currently have. And I think all of us who have experienced being at home under the lockdown would understand the difficulties that face those without access to electricity, as institutions of learning have been providing teaching through online platforms or virtual platforms. So if you do not have access to electricity, that option just does not exist for you. And I think in the 21st century, that should be seen as shameful.
Norma, I'm just going to two minutes
so
warning.
It is also because of the, how much, okay. It is also therefore an area where more and more international funding is being directed. Let's move quickly then. I'm not going to go through everything. In South Africa, the previous one, in South Africa, the off-grid energy market is well established. I just wanted to say to women out there, how this is done. I mean, if you look at it a year for 2013 million, that money goes into off-grid energy solutions, the Solar Home System program. And women in this sector are underrepresented. And I must emphasize that having sat at different bid evaluation committees, there is a dire need for more women to participate. We just don't have them. And not everybody who is in that sector is extremely qualified. What is important is that you have the drive to do the work and you have the partnerships with the right people who know how to deliver. So let's move into the next one. So I would really challenge women to make sure that as we appoint a panel of service providers over a 3-year period, that you prepare yourselves for the next opportunity, so that you are able to partner with people who have the skills to be exposed, to also allow yourself to be exposed. We can move on to the next one. Let's move. And I think you can go to the next slide, Shanda. You can always look at the website for previous terms of reference so that you can know what is required. How to become part of the renewable energy legacy? It's basically, I think it's important to affiliate with relevant associations, to build, to attend relevant events for networking, for business partnerships. There's also, I wanted to draw your attention to the South African Women in Energy Business Directory that the department of, our department is managing, where you can be able to register your profile, your company profile, so that you expose, there is exposure to your organization and yourself to other people, because many people come to government first to know what is going on in the sector. So it would be important to familiarize yourselves with that. The email, the web address is provided. The next one. The other one that I felt it was important is there is work that has been done by the Department on Energy Service Companies Market, which offers, which is also available on the SANEDI website. What's nice about it is that this register profiles companies underlining their capabilities and experience, and most of the time, then these ESCOs, that's what puts them on ahead of others, because then you are your company profile, you are already assessed in terms of your capabilities. They use a 2-tier system where you can then show the range of services that you offer. So it is catering for energy efficiency in the main, but small scale embedded generation is also included. And I think it would be nice to extend it to other renewables as well if there are opportunities. The World Bank is quite keen on this, so I would advise that women who are aspiring to establish their companies familiarize themselves with this. Let's go to the next one. I think it's almost the last. Okay, this one is what Shanda is about, developing developers workshop program. All I wanted to add my voice to say, we would like everyone to take interest and support the initiative. We know that many women supported the mentorship program that Sawia was running, and we thank you all for the sisterhood. So I wanted to say that it is every leader, all of us, we have to invest in future leaders, and it can only take one to know one, to show one, and to grow one. So let's go to the last one. I think it is. So to conclude, it is my wish that more and more women participate in the renewable energy sector. This sector, to me, is basically very broad, more diverse. It's more than, there are very diverse fields of study, because the energy field is, in my opinion, while it's important that we focus on STEM, I think it's broader than that. We need to bring everyone. We cannot leave anybody out. There is space for social scientists, for economists, for legal experts, for communicators, project managers. Everybody, they can all play an equally important role to grow the renewable energy sector. We need women leaders. We need women to participate. So I would really, I'm encouraged by this initiative, and I'm even more excited that Shanda was saying in her opening remarks, the Developing Developers Initiative and the conversation about women is going to continue. It's not going to be once off in August. I wanted to say to everybody, any limiting beliefs that you hold about yourself, remember that's all that they are. Beliefs that are limiting you from realizing your full potential. Shake them off, show the world the phenomenal woman that you are. Work to leave a legacy. Let everyone know, even in your small space, that you were here and you lived. So I leave you with the lyrics of Beyonce in her song, I Was Here. I hope you remember that as you journey through this sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nama. That was fantastic and really helpful. I think you might have covered almost everything that we're going to discuss, but that was really useful and practical information, I think, for people that are coming into the sector. We will share the slides with everybody, so you'll have access to all of the websites and the information that Noman mentioned in her talk, and we'll have time for questions later, so make notes of all the things you want to ask her, and we will address them in the Q&A session. It seems like both of us did similar research with this IRENA report. I took a couple of different things out of it. One of those being the number of women that are employed, and globally, renewables employs about 32% women compared to about 22% in the sector overall. I think echoing what Noma has said, those employment opportunities or entrepreneurial opportunities, and what we want to focus on in this upcoming panel discussion is not only the employment opportunities, but if you are a business owner, or if you want to set up a business and you want to be an investor, you want to be a developer, the opportunities that are available for women in that, and remembering that the renewables space and the value chain requires a lot of different skill sets. women played roles different in different areas globally. So from leadership roles, technical installation roles, innovations, finance. And what we've tried to do with the panel, who I'm about to introduce, actually I'm going to go this way and then come back. So we've brought together a panel of amazing women who are not only in the renewables industry, but doing very great things, of senior people in the industry with different backgrounds. And each of them is going to introduce themselves, because I don't think I can do each of them justice, but they come to us from different sectors, and they're each going to tell us a little bit about their backgrounds and how they got into renewables. What I would like the audience to do as you're listening to everything is there's a chat Q&A function, so please feel free to send questions through there as we're going along, and we'll address them in the Q&A. But this is your opportunity to people. So if you had them over coffee, what you would ask, please ask it now, and we will try and answer all of the questions. So I'm going to say for each of the ladies, please introduce yourself. There's a slide for each of them, and I've got a couple of questions. So they've been prepped to give you a short elevator pitch, but then I've also got a couple of questions for each of them, which we'll go through, and then we'll lead into the overall discussion. So Karen, you are number one up. So we've got Karen De Bruyn, who's joining us as co-founder of WeConnect and head of development for G7 Renewable Energies. So Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chanda. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today. So as Chanda said, I'm the head of development at G7 Renewable Energies and the co-founder of WeConnect, the first network for women working in renewable energy in Africa. But rewind 15 years to 18-year-old me, and I did not know really what I wanted to study. I knew I wanted to make a change. So I enrolled for BSc Conservation Ecology, and thereafter completed my master's in environmental management. When I joined G7, a local developer, my role was very much focused on the environmental work in line with my formal education. But as I kept asking questions, trying to figure out how does this whole development process work, I kind of got more in-job training, which kind of equipped me to take on this role as head of development. Last year, September, I also read the study that Chanda was referring to, that IRENA and GWEC launched around the number of women that we have in the renewable energy sector. And these numbers were really jarring to me, and it kicked me into gear to find a female mentor. But after my LinkedIn stalking was quite unsuccessful, I realized that I couldn't be the only person with this problem. And that's really what inspired me to launch WeConnect. So in May 2020, I co-founded this network to connect women that's working in renewable energy or focusing on bringing women into this industry that's interested in joining it. So today I will be wearing two hats, that as a local developer and as co-founder of WeConnect.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Karen. And we will share details for how you can join WeConnect, all of the amazing networking and mentoring opportunities that you can get through WeConnect. I think one question that I didn't put here, but we've put it in the title, is you're coming at this from a local developer's perspective, or G7 is a local South African developer. And what do you see as the opportunities for some of the audience working with local developers or getting into development?
Yeah, so you rightly point out we are a local developer. 80% of our staff are local. We have a fantastic internship program where we take on interns in engineering and environmental focus, and around 70% of them has actually now progressed into joining the renewable energy sector. So there's opportunities for internships. Then I think as a local developer, this value chain is very large. There's roles to be played in various sectors. So as Norma was mentioning, whether you are in financing, legal, environmental engineering, it all comes together. And each of those play a major role in making sure that your projects are developed successfully and to improve the quality thereof. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity out there, and especially with the integrated resource plan, which Norma also shared. I mean, there's going to be 1,600 megawatt of wind coming online every year, and 1,000 megawatt of solar for most of the years in the next decade. So there's a lot of projects that needs to be developed to meet that, and there's ample opportunity to be part of this growing network.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Our next panelist is Marcia Grimbeck from Enertrag, and she is also Head of Project Development. So Marcia, I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself and then give you some questions.
Thanks, Chanda, and good morning, everybody. Wonderful to be here this morning. So yes, many moons ago, Karen, not like your 18 years back, many moons ago, I studied finance, and you sort of think, oh, how do you end up in renewable energy? And as much as I had got my head around the financing aspect of projects, it wasn't really a passion, and started moving into project management. And then when the industry started, and Norma alluded to that, we're a young industry. 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to use my finance and project management skills and transition into the renewable energy sector. And I think what I'd like to highlight there to all the women on the call, don't box yourself and think that you have to stay in the area that you initially studied for, because you can transition from one stage to another as you move through your life cycle personally. You can also move through your life cycle professionally. I started in renewables in the development sector, and actually worked in that area of renewables for roughly 5 years, and then went on to transition to the operations sector of the business up until very recently. And again, you use the basic skills that you've acquired. I added to the finance and went to roads and did environmental management. And again, what I'm trying to showcase here is that look at the various aspects that are available in renewable energy. We tend to sometimes as women restrict our thinking and inhibit ourselves before we realize the levels of opportunity that we have available to us. Chanda, I'm aware of time. My passion is upskilling local people. And so as an international developer, we can proudly say that all of our South African offices are staffed by Africans. We're 90% South African and the balance African people from the African continent. We are passionate about upskilling local people. There is an immense opportunity, much the same as G7 have their internship programs. Many developers have similar programs where we can take people along their journey in their the evolution of their careers. And a good place to start and get a foot in the industry is to look at internship programs. It exposes you to what the aspects of development is all about. Do you have a passion for finance? Is your interest more legal? There are lots of aspects that can be brought in. What can international companies do to improve the diversity and inclusion in their local market is really to start looking at the recruitment strategy. Be understanding that you have a footprint in the country that you're in, but no one knows the country better than the people who live there themselves. And so for me, it's part of your succession planning. It's part of how you recruit. And as women, actively entrench that. If you're a senior in the organization, entrench that in the policies of your company. Make sure that you're carrying junior women, junior staff along the journey, and that you train and upskill within the company. In terms of development as an international developer, development is no different in South Africa as it is anywhere in the EU or Americas and Australia. So the same principles apply, and therefore I think women should not be scared. Individuals should not be hesitant that, oh, it's an international company, I won't be able to bring my local content or my local flair or flavor to the organization. In fact, you'd be surprised how much you have to add. And that is the advantage that we bring as local South Africans to an international company. Chanda, I'll leave you for specific questions.
I think one of the questions, and maybe we'll come back to it when everybody's online, but ladies, maybe just to think about, you know, there's often a statement that it's a struggle to find appropriately skilled people and also consider diversity when you're recruiting. And I think, how do we address those beliefs? Are they correct? I don't think they are, but when we come to the chat, maybe we can have a discussion about that, given both of your introductions about finding staff locally. But let's do the introductions. Our next panelist is Ntombi Futi-Ntuli, who's the CEO of SAWIA. And so Ntombi, if you can introduce yourself and then just chat us through what you as an industry association are doing, but also a little bit about your background as you come from the consulting and research sector. Over to you, Ntombi.
Good morning, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity to present in this very important session about opportunities in the renewable energy sector. I'd like to define myself as very passionate about clean energy transition. I started my career in Ekurhuleni municipality, where I was responsible for driving and implementing the energy and climate change strategy. And this is where I got introduced to renewable energy. And of course, I worked there for a long time until I thought, okay, it's time to explore other things. And I landed an opportunity to work for the Embassy of Denmark, where I was driving a business-to-business program, where we were matchmaking Danish and South African companies in various sectors of the economy. And then from there, I then joined government, Department of Trade and Industry, where I was director for renewable energy industries. And I think in my journey in the renewables sector, actually got strengthened at the DTI because I was directly involved with the sector. I was driving localization, writing local content requirements, and interacting with the industry from all different angles. And most of the people in this panel, some of them I met from way back then when I was working for the DTI. From DTI, then I decided to maybe look at opportunities to focus on research, and I joined the CSIR, where I was tasked to start a research group that focused on analyzing economic impacts of the energy sector transition. And I did that, started the research group, still working perfectly, and I ended up joining SAWIA, having been in the board of SAWIA for a couple of years prior to that. Last year, I joined SAWIA as CEO, and my current role is basically to coordinate the industry, to strongly advocate and lobby for the growth of the wind energy sector in South Africa. So that's the long and short of it in terms of where I come from and how do I get to where I am in my career and in my journey in the renewable sector. Talking about opportunities, it's a very interesting one because it's Women's Month. I think most of us are echoing the fact that women participation in the sector is still very minimal. I mean, I wouldn't put it at 50-50 with male participation. And I think it's quite evident when you attend events, you're always surrounded by men in suits. And sometimes for women, it can be very intimidating and not knowing how to network and how to position yourself as an individual. So my message today is having been involved in the sector, there is a lot of opportunities. I wouldn't lie. I mean, looking at the REAP program, there's a lot of specific requirements that are written in the program. When you look at, first of all, if you look at ownership, there are specific requirements written about ownership, about Black ownership in the sector. There are certain thresholds, for instance, when they talk about ownership by Black people in the seller enterprise, there's a target of 30%, and I think in bid window 4, the target increased to 40%. Shareholding by local communities, up to 20% target, shareholding by Black people in operations and in construction companies within the sector, up to a target of 30%. So if you look at that and look at how I, as a person, as an individual, or as an enterprise within the sector, can I position myself? It takes a lot of analysis. You need to understand the industry. Talking to one person about opportunities is not enough. I think if you are someone sitting on the outskirts and looking at this industry and saying, but how can I get in? How can I break through? How can I get that first contract for my business? Or how can I get the first job to get my foot in so I can start growing within the corporate space in the renewable sector? It's all about positioning yourself, networking, selling yourself and putting yourself out there. There are opportunities across the value chain, and I think, Karen, you mentioned this, that we've got a very broad value chain, from construction, from transportation and logistics, operation and maintenance, and manufacturing. Currently, government has local content requirements that requires the IPPs to support locally manufactured products and to procure local services from local enterprises. So that's an opportunity then for an enterprise to position themselves to say, okay, this is what I'm good at, or this is what I can develop myself towards, and this is where I can place myself in this value chain. And these are the kind of people that I need to talk to.
Tombi, I'm just going to ask you to wrap up so that we can go.
Okay, so just to wrap up, develop a value proposition, position yourself, be well networked in the sector, but networking also goes to an extent of you don't just show up at events, but you go there well prepared and say, this is the person that's going to be there. This is the person I want to talk to. This is what I'm going to say to them. And turn those contacts into contracts, because having conversations and it ends there, it doesn't help. So I think as women, we also have this weakness of not being able to sell ourselves and not being able to spell out what we want, and we end up being left behind. And I think my last message is we need to step up.
Thanks, Ntombi. Thank you for summarizing all of that. As you say, there are a lot of opportunities for women across the value chain. I think what you're saying is so important about networking, and actually the COVID-19 has been really a blessing in disguise for us, because now I think most people are on LinkedIn on a regular basis. So it's much easier for you as someone trying to join the industry to reach out to people on LinkedIn, ask questions, and network with people so that you can, as Ntombi says, learn about the industry and figure out your value proposition. So we'd encourage you to do that and to reach out, through WeConnect, through SAWIA, through SAPVIA, to women in the industry. We are all willing to help and speak to you. Okay, our next panelist is Mamoso May, who's the CEO of Dorper Wind Farm, and she's going to talk to us more from an operational perspective. Yeah, my opening question for you, once you've introduced yourself, is, do you need to be an engineer? Her and I have this discussion a lot. And also what the landscape looks like from an operational point of view for careers and for suppliers. Mamoso.
Thanks, Chanda. And it's still morning. Morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us. My background is finance, but I studied finance as a conduit because I always thought to myself, I am interested, I'm a curious person by nature, so I like to know how things work. I like to know what the big picture looks like. And finance has really helped me get there. At the moment, being CEO, it's quite important to understand how all the pieces fit together and what the numbers look like for maybe your shareholders, your directors at the point of reporting. And I think being an engineer, that's a difficult one, Chanda, always. You don't really, I don't think that you specifically need to be an engineer to be a CEO of a renewable energy company. I think it's important that you understand every single aspect, understanding, managing, and looking after a multi-dimensional team, a multi-skilled team, understanding everyone's needs. I think that's an important element of this role. This role is more around stakeholder management and how you make those stakeholders sort of interact with each other to get the results that you want for yourself and your ultimate shareholders. So no, you don't need to be an engineer.
Thank you.
But I also think that as women, you need to take control of your developmental pathway. It's very important that from the beginning, when before you even decide to go to university, you have an end in mind, where you want to be, where you want to go, and your whole career is planned around the path that you want to take. So, for example, if you are appointed as an intern, you need to know what your outcome needs to be from that role. So taking that role, you need to think, well, at the end of the day, my role, my path is I want to be a CEO someday. Then you make sure that you understand the whole business so that they can see your value. So I think women need to start carving out an area in organizations so they can shine. I think that's very important. Also, with the renewable industry being fairly new, I mean, 9 years, as Norma mentioned, I think we can leapfrog some of this industry norms that exist in other industries and start developing a norm for our own industry. So what does the landscape look like from an operational point of view, careers for suppliers? I think as many of my colleagues have already mentioned, the value chain is quite large, from operations and maintenance to health and safety to environmental. It's really, really quite broad. And I think there's a space for everyone. And these networks that everybody keeps referring to, these need to be tapped into. And contacting somebody on LinkedIn, what I've found personally is that people are always willing to help. People are always willing to engage. People are always willing to point you in the right direction. And contacting people via these networks, it also works and helps others sort of reach their goals. Chanda, are you happy there?
I'm happy. I think the one thing is maybe just touch on what it looks like from an operating asset point of view for careers and suppliers, and do you look to hire women and Black people, and what the supplier requirements are, maybe just briefly?
I think generally the talent we find now is found through networks. So you've heard of somebody working somewhere and you just try and get through to them and see whether they're interested in an opportunity. But in an operational point of view, various facilities or various IPPs are differently structured. So in one IPP, you could have less than 10 people employed. In another IPP, they could be grouped together and it could be like 30, 40 people employed by a group. So it really differs. In our case, our whole team is local, to the extent that the guys that run our site in the Eastern Cape live in the area around our wind farm, which is also quite remote. So we do really strive towards employing local and South Africans who have really, really good talent. And from a supplier point of view, also suppliers, as the industry evolves, there's an opportunity for suppliers specifically in the operational and maintenance phase. The operations and maintenance area has predominantly been run by OEMs. And this is also an area where local women could develop businesses that would support and repair IPP, wind turbines, help in solar panels, inverters, that sort of area. So there is really a lot of opportunity in the supply chain. and meaningful supply chain in that. So it doesn't really have to be catering. It can be really quite valuable supply chain.
Okay. Thanks, Mamuso.
All right.
Okay. Our next panelist is Rensha van Tonder from Standard Bank Group. And she's going to talk to us from a lender's perspective. So Rensha, I've put on there, just based on our chat, how does the bank look at the sector and approach some of the risks, and what opportunities do you see coming through, and what advice would you give to the attendees? Go ahead. Oh, I think you're on mute, Rensha. Let me unmute you. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're there.
Thanks, Chanda, and thanks everyone for the opportunity to be part of this session today. It's certainly very special to me, so I won't take a lot of your time, but just very briefly introducing myself. So, funny enough, I studied BSc Mathematics and Mathematical Statistics, and I did an honors in Mathematical Statistics. Some people will say to me, "Are you crazy? How can you even study that?" So, yeah, I then did an MBA to get my sanity back, and I always thought I will become an actuary, but that never happened. I think I soon realized it was a bit too boring for me, and then, after I joined Absa Actuaries, I within 6 months, I started to look for another job, and I went to IDC. And as many of you know me, I've spent about 18 years at IDC with an amazing career and an amazing experience. And I've always said to all my colleagues, it's such a unique and special organization to work for. And especially, the fact that you can make a difference in people's lives. I mean, we were very instrumental originally when I joined the mining team in doing some of the first mining transactions. When I joined and became the head of the wood and paper unit, we did community finance, for forestry companies. We supported, contractors in the sector. And I recall, sometimes I left some of those due diligence exercises being in tears to see how people struggle and how people work just to earn a decent living. So I think, my career took me then to look at more sustainable solutions. And at the time, IDC was trying to become more innovative, and it was a perfect time to look at green solutions, how we could potentially unlock, the ever-evolving renewable sector. And that's when we established the Green Unit. I believe it's now back to energy. So I left after 18 years. I decided to move on, and I joined Standard Bank. I still look back at my days at the IDC and for how I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I think the one thing that stood out for me when people ask me is, again, the IDC has done and is still doing an amazing job in terms of project development. A lot of big industries is thanks to those early risk-taking initiatives, building those projects. And I think, that's the one thing I certainly miss, having that entrepreneurial approach, partnering with clients and developing that. So very, very exciting for me. Also, bringing the early phase development of renewables in the country to the point where the IDC could participate and could unlock value. I think the one thing I've always been passionate about is, can't we unlock localization more aggressively? And at the time, a lot of work and effort went in with the DTI. I think I still want to see that bold step for a country to capitalize on those opportunities. Yeah, so maybe just a quick word on Standard Bank. I think for me, there was no other natural choice than this is the blue bank I wanted to join. The bank got a footprint in 20 African countries. I think that was, at that point of my career, the next that I was looking for. And again, amazing experience to work in an organization that cover various angles. We are fortunate, although I sit in corporate and investment banking, I work very closely with our commercial banking and PBB colleagues, and been instrumental in helping them to drive this whole sustainability, renewable energy drive. And I think, sometimes when people look at renewables, I think it's only the big projects, and Norma mentioned that. There's much more to renewables than just, you know, the program that we've seen, the success in South Africa, the larger projects in the rest of Africa, but more so, which we call the decentralized energy sector. And, you know, as a bank, we've made massive inroads in supporting that sector, building an asset book in our commercial banking space to the point that we've got to the point where we, hopefully in the next 6 months, you're going to see big announcements from the bank in taking a bit more of a bolder step in looking at various business propositions. So certainly something I'm excited about. Just back to your question, Chanda, I think banks are known to be very, you know, risk averse. And I certainly believe that, you know, what we've seen over the last 6 months has been extremely positive from a perspective that the sector has shown resilience. A lot of resilience has been shown by the renewable sector through COVID. We've seen renewable energy being the only sector that actually supported some growth in terms of the uptick in technology. We strongly believe that the cost will still continue to come down. And I think as a secondary, this is where sustainable financing will go towards. So for me, there's ample opportunities going forward. I think, you know, it's not just about trying to unpack the risks that are on the table, but more so how governments are going to be forced to take bold decisions and put more money at work towards these type of sustainable solutions going forward. I think maybe just a point to conclude with, don't only think about what do I need to study to become what my ultimate goal was. You know, I started to study mathematics because I loved it. I always said I'm going to continue to study until I'm old, but my career has taken me to a different level where I just love and enjoy my job every day. And I think, you know, make sure that you are passionate and have energy in what you're doing. I always say to my team, you know, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then think twice and maybe find something else to do. I do believe that, just back to the sector, look at it from, it's an ecosystem. It's not only about the value chain and about the real opportunities that you see tomorrow being an equity player in a big project. It's very difficult. There's high barriers to entry. There's much more to this sector than just trying to get an equity stake in a project. I think we've seen how many sectors and industries are developing through embracing the whole ecosystem around it. And that's also been part of my motto and more broadly in the bank, looking at how we can, you know, unlock the ecosystem and bring in more participants, focusing specifically on transformation. So thanks, Chanda. I'll pause there if there's any other points you want me to raise.
No, I think you've covered everything. We'll probably come back to you when we do the more open questions. But thank you, Rensha.
Thanks.
Okay, our next panelist is Lindsay Tassel, who's head of project implementation at EDF Renewables. And after our "you need to be an engineer," Lindsay is an engineer, and she operates in the construction space, so surrounded by men mostly. So Lindsay, I think the first question that we've got here is, once you've introduced yourself, what it's like being a woman in construction, and then also just maybe chatting through what you're doing personally, but also what EDF is doing as an international player to attract women to the industry, and how people can potentially participate during construction. Over to you.
Oh, well, thanks very much for having me today, Chanda. I'm really happy to be engaging and joining this discussion. So I'm a civil engineer by training, because I think a little bit like Rensha, I was a bit of a maths and science geek when I was at school, and it's always seemed good to be able to say that, you know, I had built a particular piece of infrastructure or whatever. So I studied civil engineering, and then I came out of university and went into an engineering consultancy, as you did. And I actually specialized originally in the water industry for a couple of years, got professionally qualified, and an opportunity came across my door to get involved as the assistant project manager for the construction of a wind farm for an IPP in northeast of England. And basically that was my way into the industry, and I haven't looked back since. A hop, skip and a jump from the UK across to South Africa about 8 years ago. And yeah, this is where things are. So it is rough, potentially, being a woman in construction. You know, construction industry hours are what they are, and often our construction sites are in the middle of nowhere. So it isn't necessarily the easiest industry to be a woman in. Those long hours and that travel can be quite significant, particularly if you're a site engineer, for example, who is potentially based on a site well away from home for months at a time. Balancing that with having a family life is certainly not going to be easy. And there's a wider conversation here about the construction industry generally, and how it needs to change to be able to accommodate, probably the wrong word, but certainly to attract and to retain women and talented women within the industry. Yeah, as an IPP, it's not quite as bad, I guess, as working for a contractor. But I have to laugh because, you know, in my team, we get involved in projects during the financial close phase, and then we hand them over as a completed asset at commercial operations to our operations and maintenance teams. And you see the difference in the makeup, and that I ran a report and highlighting basically that, you know, of the 32% of women that do exist in the renewable energy industry, there's a severe disproportion of women who are represented in the STEM types of jobs. Absolutely see that. You know, you look at financial close and you have about 80% of women around the table, because you've got financiers, you've got lawyers, you've got specialists, you know, you've got those jobs that don't necessarily require crazy amounts of travel. And then you sit at your first site meeting when you have a project in construction and you're one of potentially only 2 women around the table and the other one's the administrator. So in my experience, there's a definite shortage of women in site management, in project management, in those leading roles in that construction sector. They are coming through, and we're starting to see more women coming through in our industry, you know, coming up from those sort of quality assurance, quality engineer type of roles, and finding their way up and finding that experience and coming through into the assistant and the project manager related roles. But it's something that we need to try and accelerate, in my view. EDF, and what we're doing to support diversity will actually be internationally. EDF, I mean, the statistics I think are probably about the same with I ran a report for where EDF sits in terms of gender balance. But actually, I mean, our local subsidiary, I think last year, managed to achieve about 50-50 gender parity, which was amazing. It's a difficult thing to hold because obviously you have recruitment and things that change. But we were the first of the EDF renewable subsidiaries globally to achieve that, and it's something that we were really proud of locally. In terms of participation in the construction phase as individuals and businesses, I mean, the construction phase has massive amounts of opportunity, and particularly, as Karen was saying, with, you know, the IRP and with what we're expecting to see coming through in the next 10, 20 years, in terms of construction opportunities is enormous. Particularly under the REAP programme, you know, obviously there are massive opportunities for women-owned vendors, for women to develop their own businesses and provide those technical services. You know, we need to start looking outside of the support roles, the administrative roles, the sort of environmental, the softer things. And we need to have women that are owning businesses that are doing switchgear maintenance, that are doing sort of cable installation, all those kinds of works. We need to have women owning civil engineering businesses and owning and really operating and being involved. It does exist. Not enough. You know, we need to really be looking at those emerging SMEs and finding ways to develop them, and to really sort of build that nice supply chain of South African businesses into the program. Yeah.
Thank you, Lindsay. I think everybody, I can see everybody nodding their heads as you're saying it, so I think everybody's in agreement. Okay, we're going to switch a little bit now. We've had perspectives from the utility scale programs, and as Noma mentioned, you know, that's not the only game in town really in renewables. There are also smaller scale projects that are going on, rooftop commercial and industrial projects. And so our next panelist is going to chat to us a bit more about the small scale embedded generations, or SSEG sector. The questions that I've put here are kind of how is it different from the utility scale, and what opportunities that you see. And so Hulisani Nesuiwi from Solar Swap, she's the CEO for their new entity, Trilema Impact Investments. Hulisani, I've got your 2 slides there for you, so you'll tell me when you want me to skip to them, but over to you. Oh, hold on, you're on mute, you're on mute. Let's unmute you.
Unmute.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Great. Thank you so much. You can put up the first slide already. It's just a visual, and I don't mind it hanging in the background because I want everybody to see why I'm so passionate about the SSEG space. But before I jump into that, my name is Hulisani Nesuiwi. Unlike most of the panelists, I actually studied industrial psychology, and at my graduation, I realized that I made a massive mistake. So I decided to enroll in a grad program with Liberty Group. And that actually immediately felt like home. It was the only program I applied to, and they accepted my application. And I think it's just because when something feels like home, the way you approach it is different, and it just enables you to navigate that environment a lot better. And that's going to be the theme of a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be saying around the SSEG space within renewable energy. From a technical perspective within Liberty, I kind of drifted towards your project side, and then I fell in love with business development. I ended up running business development for the Africa divisions for their healthcare company, Liberty Health, and running the corporate accounts across all their units across Africa. And it was a big job, and I was very young, but I was quite passionate about it, which helped me to manage the challenges that came with the job, a lot better than what people had anticipated I would, because, like I said, I didn't have the academic background within the healthcare or the financial services industry. After being at Liberty for a couple of years, I actually left the business, and I ended up starting my own investment company, and we got different funding from different private equity guys, and we invested in companies within the energy space, energy and mining. And once again, I hated it. Well, I love the investment side of it, and I love the finance side of it, but I realized that my passion is more in your technical side of finance. So I decided that I'm going to consult on business development and finance and try and bridge the gap between the two. It was quite a struggle for many years, but I've eventually, found a happy place and a way in which to make it work. Within the energy sector, we invested in so many different companies. All of them were your dirty energies. And through that process, because as part of the investment process, you actually end up learning, you have to guess what the future of the industry looks like. And over the years, I understood that dirty energies are on their way out. And if they're not, we should push them out, because we reached a point around 2010 where clean energy became financially viable. And that's when the light bulb started going off in my head to say, how do we make clean energy viable within the context that I operate in, which is in South Africa. So since that point in time, I started consulting for different organizations and businesses to kind of move them, transform them towards clean energy, helping them redesign their businesses, their communications, their marketing, and that type of stuff. And then last year, I joined the board of a very interesting company called Solar Swap. And Solar Swap, basically, they are an EPC company fundamentally. However, they're run by an engineer who developed, he developed South African products for the renewable energy sector with a focus on the SSEG space, and in particular, your energy poverty cluster of customers. So these are people who typically have never had energy or who wouldn't be able to afford renewable energy products, even if they currently have unstable energy. Yeah, I mean, I think, so as part of the deal, my deciding to join the company was that they would then support me and give me the leverage I needed to list or to create my own fund, which is focused primarily on renewable energy. And we just got the licenses for that recently, hence why now I'm CEO of that fund. Yay, I'm very excited about that. And yeah, the future for us is for us to just focus on making financial, creating financial products for the RE space. That's the first thing that I'm working on and have been working on for a couple of months now. We do have some financial products which will be released soon. But more importantly is to make renewable energy products more accessible to the ordinary man on the street. What everybody in the RE space knows is that the big, the utility scale projects get all the attention, and the small SSEG level projects are seen as, being very cute. However, if you look at your screens, my little slide shows you that actually outside of utility scale, the SSEG sector, your residential, which is primarily driven by residential and commercial, together, they actually exceed your utility scale market. So whenever I talk to young people about renewable energy and entering the market, I always say to them that, you always aim for like your big projects and, like one of the speakers before me said, you kind of try to become maybe like a partner with these big guys to do like these really massive government-driven projects. But from an accessibility and even a scalability perspective, your small low-hanging fruits is, when combined with the commercial, bigger than your utility scale. So, and they're a lot easier to enter that sector, whether it's from a, whether it's from an installer perspective, where you're going to run your own construction and installation company, or from a projects and development perspective, where I know a company where all they do is they find customers who are looking for energy projects, and then they match them with installation companies. Like, there's so many ways to play in that sector. And all it really needs you to have is just a basic understanding of the energy environment, which you can get from attending one of the courses that are offered through the Sapphire training partners. Or obviously, if you have an educational background in energy, you'd be able to play some of those roles quite nicely. I know I'm running over, Shanda. Please go to my next slide. I'm going to speak faster, I promise. Just to pivot into that, to say, how do we then get young ladies, and I know there's some guys on here as well, how do we get young people to pivot into renewable energy? I want you to kind of lean into what I said, which is the feeling I had when I was graduating from industrial psychology. And I knew that this is not what I want to do, and I want to lean into something else. I still had to take whatever skill set I had naturally or academically and then apply them into my chosen field. So you want to do the same thing. You don't need to stop what you're doing, go back to VITS and now study environmental sciences or something like that. Whatever skill set you have, by merely choosing to focus it within the renewable energy space will position you in a position of strength over the next 10 to 20 years. And every speaker that has spoken so far has confirmed that the next 10 to 20 years are going to see massive growth in the industry. So instead of getting tied up in the technical side of things, you could use whatever skill set you have, whether it's in marketing or research or training, and apply those within renewable energy companies. The only advice I would give is that you really want to, because RE is very, very specialized, I would strongly advise that you either partner with a company that's currently operating. And I say partner because not all of them will be able to employ you right now, but I do want you guys to kind of start getting exposed to the industry. So if you go to a company and you say, I'd like a job, and they say, listen, we can't give you a job, say, fine, can I partner with you? Can I volunteer? Can I take part in any internship program you have? Just so you get the exposure, because what you really want in RE more than anything is experience. Because I promise you, even if you have 3 years experience, you're definitely going to stand out, because there's not a lot of people who are actually exposed to the industry. And it's one of the fastest growing industries globally. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry specifically. So just by interacting with the
10 seconds, Alisani.
Thank you. Just by interacting in whatever way you can, you will definitely be able to capitalize and grow your brand and your business, or just your career within the industry. I did make a list of the top or the fastest growing and the highest earning elements within the industry or career paths. So if you're in any of those sectors, there are many opportunities open for you in the form of jobs and business opportunities and contracts that you can win. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Shad.
No, thank you very much. I think that's really useful. I'm just going to skip to and you did mention them. So, I think we just need to remember that there's a balance between some people want to join and have a long career with an entity, but there's also people that want to set up their own businesses and work for themselves, and provides a lot of training opportunities for installers, information. So please have a look at the website if that is the route that you want to go. And I think Danielle, you might touch on this a bit later, but there's access to funds for training. Companies have to spend on supplier development, enterprise development, economic development. So you can access and get these opportunities by getting in touch with people. Now, I'm conscious that we have not a lot of time, so I'm probably going to keep this extremely short because then we're going to jump to Danielle. So I think one of the things that I just wanted to discuss, and I'll pick two respondents, is we talk a lot about getting people into the industry, and that is obviously very important. But what we need to look at is, as everybody in here is saying, they've been in the industry for X number of years. So hopefully once we get you in, you're here to stay, and not only just stay, but be happy and productive and love your job, as Rencha says, and be passionate about your job. So I think what we want to talk about is how do we get buy-in from other people in the industry, particularly male senior managers, to promote this diversity and inclusion, and also just to think about some of the issues that as women that we face. So issues around pay gaps, issues around women in senior management, in board positions, executive positions, issues around job satisfaction. I'm going to maybe start that with Karen, particularly because I've got my next slide is stolen from one of her webinars, which is about women's career development and the assumptions that we have. And so Karen, if I can hand over to you for a minute to maybe respond.
Thank you. Okay, I'll keep it to 1 minute because I think I can talk quite a long time about this, because we had during our last session that we had with WeConnect, we had a fantastic speaker called Melanie Green who presented this, and this is taken from research. So basically what the research shows is that traditionally men, they value certain things in different phases. So in the first phase, like when they start out their career, they really want to be challenged. And then that kind of switch over to authenticity as they move into the mid phase. And then towards the end of their career, they really value balance. Now, what's really interesting from this research is that females value all three of these things in each of the three stages. So if you think multitasking, 1,000 tabs open at a time, I think this is very interesting, because I think a key assumption that companies tend to make is that the mid phase, where women typically tend to start having families, it's natural that you would then value balance. And it's clear in that graph. But what's really interesting, and what I think is worthwhile to keep in mind, is that the need for challenge and authenticity does not go away. That is still there. And it's the same with the early stage. You focus on challenge the same as men, but you already start to anticipate that in your mid phase, you will want to have balance. So I think recruiting for females is very important, but keeping this need in mind is very important to retaining them in this industry. I hope that was kept to 1 minute, Chanda.
It was. And actually, yeah, thank you. That was a good segue into the next bit, because I think one of the things that I find really interesting over the past few months is how COVID-19 has changed the situation for women, not only in the industry, but generally, and assumption or the attitudes towards women and towards people having families, or disruptions with, we had earlier dogs barking in the background, or kids walking into meetings. And it's generally been something that women have been negatively impacted by. I think that has changed over the past couple of months. I might just give this one to Lindsay. I think this one you're fairly passionate about, so do you want to talk for a minute?
Well, in my personal circumstances, I mean, I've been working from home for about 4 years now. But yeah, I mean, my colleagues have certainly, I mean, the last 6 months, we all had to adapt, and we all had to adapt to the new normal of working remotely. And very, very quickly, we found that people who had never really used Office 365 before suddenly were investigating it and using Teams, and we were having all these awesome video conferences. And in our experience, we haven't really seen any drop in productivity. And I know that there's some studies that have come out of the States recently that have been backing that up and actually proving that this working from home isn't a skive, as we would say, that perhaps a lot of employers have thought it would be. You know, before COVID, there was potentially this perception that you work from home, so, you know, you're not as committed, or, you know, if I can't get you on the phone, then you're probably, you know, out shopping on work time and all of those things. And actually, really what it's proven over the last 6 months is that, you know, people can be trusted to work effectively and to deliver on what is expected of them working remotely, and balancing their life with that. You know, parents have been thrown into the most unnatural situation where you're trying to juggle small children or trying to juggle school-age children, keep their education up at the same time as you're trying to juggle all of your work responsibilities. And I think as women, and certainly chatting to some of the women in my own organization, you know, there's been instances where you're catching up on work late at night, really super early in the morning, because you know you're going to be distracted during the day, but ultimately you're still finding harmony between having the challenging career that you want and obviously what's expected of you in your private life, and actually having a private life. So I think most employers are going to find it really difficult to try and convince their staff to actually go back to being chained to their desks after this.
I think so too. Okay, I am conscious that it is our sponsor spotlight time. I come back to some of the other bits later if we have a couple of minutes. One thing I did want to put up, this is from the latest IPP office report, and it's because they report on the share of Black, disabled, young people and women that are active in the industry during construction. I'm hoping, and if there's anybody from IPP office, please report on it during the operational phase as well. That would be useful. But we are at about 10% of women, which I think is something that we really can do better, both from an employment point of view, which is this, but also from skills development and enterprises. And so with that in mind, I'm going to jump again. I'm going to hand over to Danielle Harding, who's from our sponsor for the webinar today, ED Platform. She's a senior consultant. I will allow her to introduce herself as like everybody else. And Danielle, your slides are in here, so just shout as you want me to change.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to share this platform with such inspiring women. So thank you very much for having me. And I think like many of the ladies on this platform, to just go back to Mersha's sentiments about not boxing yourself into what you have studied and trying to stay in line with your formal qualifications. I did a master's degree in environmental policy development, and I've now found myself in a space of social development and enterprise development. So very much two sides of the same coin, and the one has led me to the other. But I think definitely the advice is to keep an open mind in terms of what you might be capable of, and recognize that your interests develop as you grow and mature. If we can just go to the second slide, I think, please. We're the first. So just a quick introduction to ED Platform. We've been part of the renewable energy industry since its inception. And we're a diverse team of corporate advisors and economists and data analysts. And we've sort of, on the back of the IPP policy, have become experts in delivering a variety of economic development orientated services to the industry. And this really, you know, our services sort of cater to milestones throughout a project life cycle, right from tender submission through to measuring the impact of community development projects and operations. So very broadly speaking, these are 5 general categories of our services. And yeah, well, the development of these services have been very much orientated first and foremost around policy compliance for IPPs implementing projects and executing ED commitments. We've also garnered a far deeper appreciation for the need to go beyond compliance in order to affect real sustainable economic growth. Yeah, so part of the IPP operations is a commitment to community development, both social as well as enterprise development. And to put this in perspective, the IPPs have got a 20-year PPA. Now, 20 years of investing in community development really presents an opportunity to change a generation. You know, if you think that you could easily have social development funds committed to a child from ECD right through to tertiary education, you know, and that's not an opportunity to take lightly. But to be successful in really having that impact on the community is to have really well thought out development strategies. And this is difficult because you don't know how environments might change in the next year, never mind the next decade. But at the very least, investors should be asking the question of what it is that we would have wanted to achieve by the end of the PPA. So there are local community policy incentives that are in place, which means that across the industry, we're generally seeing development of local enterprises that respond to local community market gaps. And we're not really seeing any type of development at a provincial or industry-wide level just yet. And with opportunity that the new risk mitigation RFP poses, it might be worthwhile to encourage IPPs to consider setting targets at a provincial level, particularly for development of enterprises and suppliers, because this potentially holds a far greater opportunity for lasting economic growth, as you know, the impact will be broader rather than so very localized. Of course, it's not quite that simple, and there's a whole host of contractual considerations here, but it's certainly something to apply our minds to, you know, the concept of the impact that the IPPs are going to have or would have achieved by the end of their PPA. Next slide, please, Chanda. So inspired by another female keynote speaker I had the pleasure of listening to a while back, I feel that the principle of labor productivity should really be at the core of our endeavors as development advisors, but also something for SMMEs looking to develop themselves to take to heart. So in its simplest form, the concept of labor productivity considers the amount of GDP that's produced by an hour of labor. So the increase in productivity of the labor force would, in theory, directly result in an increase in GDP, which, I mean, South Africa is desperate for economic stimulation and economic growth at the moment. So I think what we need to really focus our attention on as development advisors, and again from the other side of the coin as those seeking to be developed, is really to optimize the labor force. And what this means is investment in 3 key areas. And again, as I work through these 3 key points, from 2 sides of the coin, I'd like to say as a development advisor, as well as from the other side of the coin, you know, those seeking to be developed or to gain experience. So physical capital is the first prominent tier of this concept of labor productivity, and this really looks at infrastructure, the tools of the trade, so to speak. So from the perspective of development advisor, We're looking at things like service delivery that's available to communities, that's available to SMMEs as well. And it's a bit of a difficult subject because while it's the government of the mandate often, you know, speaking about things like education, it's often something that the private sector would shy away from. And this is something for far deeper conversation. But it also includes critically, I think, in this information age, infrastructure as simple as internet. You know, and if it wasn't apparent before, I think the last few months have really shown us that a tool such as internet is absolutely essential for conducting business these days. So my advice to SMMEs that are seeking development is know what physical capital, know what physical infrastructure it is that you need in order to do your business. You know, often we ask that, you know, we presented with business plans, for example, where we've been asked then, how do I make this work? Or how do I grow as a company? And as much as we are able to do that research, really it should be coming from the SMME themselves, you know, to do the homework and understand what tools it is that you need in order to get the job done. Next is intellectual capital, and intellectual capital speaks very much to innovation, particularly in technological innovation. And the most immediate opportunity that I think of here for the renewable energy industry, apart from the supply chain, but also supporting industries, is the development of battery storage. You know, that's something that's hard and fast, very, very quickly becoming a reality as people are conducting a lot of research and development into making battery storage a lot more efficient and a lot more affordable for the industry. And South Africa has an abundance of natural resources, which doesn't necessarily have to be a curse if combined with proper innovative research and development, because that's only going to further enable manufacturing of local content that's going to be very needed. So again, but my advice here to SMMEs that are seeking to be developed, as it were, is position yourself, and to again repeat the sentiments of the ladies previously. Know what it is that your value proposition is, know what it is that the market needs, and know what your skill set is and how you can respond to those needs. You know, really do the research, read the articles, form the opinions, and really try to position yourself in terms of the trends and in terms of what the renewable energy is going to be needing at large in the next year, 5, 20 years. There's a whole host of opportunity there. And it's not limited to renewable energy. This very quickly bleeds over into the mining industry as well, which is very well established in South Africa. And then finally, human capital. This quite obviously speaks to education and training and skills development. And it begins at the most fundamental level, again, with education and primary education. But it also extends to vocation and the development of skills. And the transfer of skills for me is not necessarily formal training programs with certificates that are obtained. The transfer of skills is so very broad as a concept. And what's really stood out for me over the years of training programs that we've offered that have very hard skills in terms of the content of the programs, but particularly entrepreneurs and SMMEs that are based in the local communities, the feedback from them and what stood out most is, for example, communication etiquette, confidence in being able to communicate, confidence to be able to pick up a phone or know how to structure an email. And it might seem like a very simple concept to us who are privileged enough to have been exposed and had so much experience in this regard. But really, it's a matter of exposure. And as with any skill, to master this requires repetition. And exposure doesn't necessarily have to cost anything. You know, you can get really creative, as Fulisani was saying as well, in terms of partnering with people, offering your skills, getting creative in terms of how you can, again, position yourself to trade a skill and just try to be present in those, around those boardroom tables, be present in those conversations, and really do make the effort to capacitate yourself. And like I say, it's not necessarily on a formal training program, but through networking. Again, it's all about exposure. Do the research, do the homework, come with hard and fast questions, and know exactly what it is that you want to learn. You know, there's lots of questions about what training program can I attend, and that's fine. That's definitely the first step in knowing, you know, that that's something a skill that you require. But what training is it you're looking for? Where is it that you're hoping to end up? You know, it's not easy. It's not an easy question to answer, for sure. But I would really advise that you do that homework yourself and have very hard targets, have very specific objectives, in what it is that you'd like to achieve. And as Mim also mentioned earlier as well, take control of your own development pathway. You know, don't wait for somebody to offer vacancies. Don't wait for people to offer RFQs, you know, requests for quotes out into the market. Be very proactive and anticipate what it is that the market's going to need, and assess what it is that you need to do that job. And I think opportunities will certainly come your way. But this is, of course, underpinned by two further points, is that we need a degree of policy certainty, and also on the other side of the coin, market certainty. So even if the funding exists and is made available, very few people would take the risk of investing in local content manufacturing capacity, for example, with no guarantee that the investor can make use of their infrastructure developed, you know, in the upcoming years. So a solution to this is obviously policy certainty, which is a monumental task for sure. And I feel also very much an iterative process between the public and the private sector. It's very much a moving target as the public and private sector interact and exchange ideas, objectives, and as trends start to emerge. But the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy really has made incredible strides in this regard.
I can just give you a 1 minute warning.
Sure. So the DMRE, I feel, has made really incredible strides in this regard with continuous improvements in the IPP program. So, for instance, the addition of a supplier development sub-element, in addition to the local content qualifying criteria, which now extends into operations as well. That in combination with sub-elements in job creation for women and youth. You know, from a policy perspective, I think we're bound to see some very real growth in SMMEs. And while the government contributes the guidance and the authority in this regard, I think it's also up to the private sector to take initiative here as well. You know, they can offer a degree of market certainty through creative barrier-breaking procurement policies. And what SMMEs really need to grow is offtake agreements, it's contracts, it's opportunities to develop track records. And in this regard, I've really admired the work done by other industry associations that have facilitated that members are paired together in projects, for example, based on their track records, and paid on the basis of their own experience. You know, so there's a very immediate mentorship and skills transfer that's happening there, and that's a very creative approach, which I'd really encourage procurement policies to consider. And just in conclusion, I think if we didn't feel the pressure to do so before, then now, post-COVID, more than ever, we have the responsibility, the duty even, to stimulate economic growth. You know, to gone are the days where we scramble for a piece of the pie. What we need now is to develop something new. And to create requires creativity. You know, creativity in how we structure business deals, in how we include people in the market. and how incredible that we were able to say that we've lived through the season that the world stood still through COVID. And this has presented us with such a unique opportunity to reimagine policy and reimagine what the economy can be for the people.
Thank you so much, Danielle. That was really informative and useful. I think we are about to go into, I think there's contact details, but they'll be in the slides when you receive them as the attendees, so you can get in touch with her with any questions or further information. We have time briefly for Q&A. I see some messages in the chat. I haven't seen any in the Q&A, but if you have questions, please start typing away, and we can, if you have them to direct at specific people, then please put their names on there, and I'll try and facilitate directing them. While we're waiting for some questions, what I'm going to do, just because I'm aware that we're running out of time, is we kind of chatted at the beginning about why we came up with this session and what we wanted to do about the session, or what we wanted to achieve about the session. And really it's about supporting each other and about building people up within the industry and giving them access to the opportunities that all of us had. So throwing the rope back, really, and that together we can do better. So Noma, let the secret out of the bag. But basically what we have come up with is that we are launching something that we're calling the Developing Developers series. And essentially this is to share all of the knowledge and information that some of these wonderful ladies have shared today, but also all of the people that are active in the industry that are willing to give of their time. And basically we're going to partner with different entities. We're committed to uplifting and empowering women, youth, Black people and to get access to the opportunities in the sector. And so in each of these sessions, which we're looking at 7 webinars over the next 7 or 8 months, to unpack projects, see how you can get involved, give you tips and hints, and basically educate you. And I think that what Danielle was alluding to is, you know, you also need to work towards that goal yourself and understand what you want to learn. But part of that webinar series, if I can get to the next one, these are the titles of the webinars, and there'll be further details that will be available either from us at SAPVIA or the SAWIA team. You can get in touch directly, and we'll be also putting out more information digitally through LinkedIn, etc. So please get in touch, please participate. Anybody that wants to help, please shout. The more the merrier. But yes, it should take you through an understanding of projects right from the beginning, from the R through to the operations stage of projects. I don't see any questions here. Let me see. I think everybody is. We've got lots of compliments if everybody can see. So I'm going to keep going until I see questions from people. If not, so thank you everybody for attending. I think that was a really great session. I feel really positive about the industry, positive about all of our panelists. Thank you for all the other questions. There's none coming up on mine, Danielle. Sorry, someone's. Maybe this is me and my technology. Let me open this again. Hold on a second, sorry. I don't know why these aren't showing. Maybe it's because I am the host. Let me try again. Maybe Kim, can you see the questions and maybe direct some of them? Sorry, because it's just saying no open questions on mine for some reason. I am on the Q&A function.
I don't see any questions on the Q&A function either. Just comments in the chat box.
Okay, I think it must be. Okay, do you want to please go ahead, and if someone can read them out because they can't see them.
Okay, so first one that's not been answered is from Hazel Kahari. She's asking, how do entrepreneurs access training for renewable energy? We're currently adding to our portfolio and would require as much training as we can. How and where can we get access? So this one, can I just fly through them?
Yes, do go ahead. So, yep. How can we access training? Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, if I were to sit with Ms. Noma Klase, I would ask her, how can an organization aiming to not only drive sustainable energy awareness in industries such as agri-industries and mining, but accelerate customer buy-in, work with the Renewable Energy Initiative program at the DME? So that one is for Noma. Coffee with all the ladies. This is from Anonymous. My question is, what can be the role of NGOs in regards to encouraging more women participation in the renewable energy space? That's from Anonymous. Another one from Terry Kruger. I hope panelists are noting so you can respond. From Terry Kruger, what would be the best entry point for a small consulting business to enter the IPP space? Next one from Granny Mukwena. If a small company gets work, would any of your companies be able to partner with them, but with the aim of providing skills transfer and financial backing?
Maybe let's try and answer a couple in Tumbi, and then we can go to some other ones. I think maybe I'll jump on the accessing training and then I'll hand over to Noma. I think for accessing training, there was quite a few links on the slides that Noma put together. So Saratech from a wind point of view, the PV Green Card that also provides training. One thing to look at that people are not necessarily always aware of, online Coursera and edX are international websites that have free courses about basically anything that you can ever imagine from international universities, and you can just sign up to those. So access those, but it's also worth getting in touch directly with IPPs about what they have available and the funding opportunities that they have or training opportunities that they have. Does anybody else want to add to them? Maybe just stick your hand up if you do. Okay. Maybe then I'll just have Noma. I think the question that was directed to you about accelerating access. Would you be able to just respond quickly?
Yes, I have responded. I've typed my answer, but basically it would be great to have a chat offline to understand exactly what Anonymous would like to do in terms of getting more customer buy-in. What they mean by that would assist me to, but we are open to have a conversation.
Okay. I think then the next question, and maybe we can direct this to you, Danielle. What can be the role of NGOs to encourage more participation from women?
I think definitely, again, programs just to educate people in terms of not necessarily giving them the hard skills that they need, but I'm such a big fan of the softer skills. You know, really getting women together to be confident in themselves, to be able to present, to be able to formulate an argument, and you know, if they ever do have the opportunity to ever be around a boardroom, for example, just have the confidence to be present, you know, to make their presence really felt. I think there's a lot of development opportunity here that NGOs can fill the role of.
Okay, great. And then I think the last question, and they're probably, I'll smush them together and then direct them to one developer, one construction, one operation. So entries for small consultancies, what's the best entry point, and also how do they partner? So maybe Mersha, if you could just answer from a development point of view, then Lindsay, then Mamoso, just very quickly, and then we're going to have to wrap up because we're running out of time, honey.
I'll be quick, Chanda. I think firstly is networking. It's important to build your brand even as an SMME. Find the networks. You've seen Karen has put on the chat function how to connect on WeConnect, and through those networking opportunities, you'll find IPPs or women who are looking for perhaps smaller consultancies. You're building your brand. You're finding those opportunities, and then it's about selling yourself. So find those opportunities, have the coffees, but as Ntombi alluded to, turn the conversation into a contract through that network. Show your skills, show your abilities, and it's not just one phone call or contacting one IPP or saying to the IPP office, here I am. You're actually going to have to navigate this as you would any other business transaction. Sell yourself, network, and start through those opportunities, turning those conversations into contracts.
Okay, I'm getting frantic messages. So I think we are running out of time. So let me, what I need to do is firstly say thank you to all my wonderful panelists. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Secondly, if people still have questions, and I'm sorry, I don't know what happened technically because I really can't see any of the questions. We'll try and answer as many as we can, but also feel free to reach out directly to the panelists with questions on LinkedIn or contact Sapvia or Sawia, and we'll try and direct everything. What I just want to do now in closing is hand over to Melissa Bender, who is she's actually a qualified town and regional planner who specializes in environmental management, but now her role is head of marketing and senior manager at Messe Frankfurt, South Africa, who are running the Solar Power Africa show. She's been with the business for over 3 years, and she is going to just close the event for us. So Melissa, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chanda. So good afternoon, everyone. As Chanda mentioned, my name is Melissa Bender, and I'm the head of marketing for Messe Frankfurt. I think that proves in line with today's message that it's really not about what you studied, but it's the path you choose for your career. Now, I'd like to thank Sapvia for today's really informative and fantastic webinar, and for giving me the opportunity to update you on the latest news regarding our Solar Power Africa event. So, for most of us, 2020 has not gone as planned. It's been no different for us in the events industry, and we're still making lots of effort to continue supporting the industries that we are involved in. So the inaugural 2020 edition of Solar Power Africa will now take place online as a virtual marketplace and a 2-day conference from the 28th to 29th of October. And we're also proud to announce that Sapvia will be the main endorsing association of this virtual marketplace. So even though we're not able to have a physical event this year, the virtual platform will still allow you as a renewable energy industry to continue to connect, to continue to network and maintain a presence in the global markets. And some of the key features includes AI-powered matchmaking, personalized exhibitor and product searches, and scheduled video meetings and integrated streaming of seminars. So ultimately, it's a one-stop platform, and it allows you to do business from one centralized hub. But I know we're running out of time, so we will be sharing more information on this in the coming weeks. And we'll include an email address in the follow-up mail to this webinar of my colleague, Tracy Gounden. She is heading up this project. So if you'd like to find out more or present your business to a targeted audience, then she will be able to assist. Please get in contact with her. And on behalf of Solar Power Africa, I'd like to thank you for attending today's session, and I look forward to seeing everyone again on our next webinar. And to all the ladies who presented today, it's been an honor spending this time with you. Thank you, Chanda.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much, everybody. And we will see you at the next webinar. I will share all of the information, and please feel free to keep in contact.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well done.
Everyone. Thanks so